Welcome back to the Premier League preview show. It's time for the debate. So like I said, now that we are done with digesting the games, let's put on our intellectual boxing gloves and see who emerges the winner in this new battle, the battle of the fresh faces, Chris Nimley and Edwin Kwakofi. Interesting stuff there. So let's get into today's topic. Today we're asking a very, very interesting topic. We are saying, is the future of Arsenal safe in the hands of Unai Emery? Is the future of Arsenal safe in Unai Emery's hands? Fans don't like some of the decisions he's made. Fans believe that he will not take them anywhere. But Arsenal's management seems to think that he's the man who will take them from this point and move them upwards. Chris, let me start off with you. I don't know how you want to approach this, but is the future of Arsenal safe in Unai Emery's hands?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so because, look, you can't look at Unai Emery alone and say he should be the determining factor of Arsenal's future. No. Whoever does that completely is not aware of how that team is run as a football club. You and I know that Arsenal will not want to spend big in the market. This is the first time they've gone to the market and they've bought a player for 70, how much? 72, 75 million. But even that, look at the manner in which
they are spreading the payments.
It's like a payment plan. We spread it over 5 years. How many teams would have allowed that to happen? How many teams? A Leicester City will not allow Man United to spread 80 million over 5 years for Maguire. So it has to do with those in charge of the finances, not the manager. Now, you may want to question some of his decisions tactically. The managers are humans. They do make mistakes when the game is ongoing. But he's shown that wherever Arsene Wenger left this team, don't forget, Wenger left the team in a position that needed somebody to get the players to believe in. Look at the players Wenger left back. Wenger bought Lacazette. Wenger bought Aubameyang. But apart from these two very intelligent players that Wenger left behind, he left him Xhaka, unfortunately. But he's brought in Gondozi. He's brought in the Spanish boy from Real Madrid, Ceballos. He's brought in Pepe. So you can clearly see that this is a manager who wants his ideas to be put out there by players who believe in him or those he believes in as players. So where are they at the moment? What do they expect to be after Wenger had been there for close to 22 years?
After spending a lot of money, a lot of people would think that Arsenal, if not challenging, would be good, viable candidates for top four.
No, look, in his very first season, he took them to the Europa League final. In a season where he himself went through some understudy of the league. He's now in a better position. He understands the English league better. Look, coaching in England is not like coaching elsewhere. You need to understand, when do I play certain players? This is a game for physical players. This is a game that I can afford to tweak my team a bit. In this game, we cannot attack. Look, this is done only in England, not in Spain, not anywhere in the world. So this manager clearly has proven that he's also learned. Don't forget, he's a winner. He's an achiever. At least he won the French league. He won the Europa Cup with Sevilla back to back. And he proved that with this Arsenal team by getting them to the final. Arsenal only lost to who? Chelsea. Ask yourself, if that had been Wenger, would they have won that game? No, because Wenger himself is on record. How many times did he beat Chelsea as a manager? He hardly beat them. So for me, they are in the right hands. They will have to give him time and allow him to work. Back him. Hopefully, he will get in there and bring in some good, solid recruit. Arsenal did not have money to buy a quality centre-back. So who did they go for?
They went for David
Luiz. You don't blame Unai Emery for that. Because he made it clear that I want to offload Mustafi. So once he said he wanted to offload the most expensive defender in the team, those guys who are in charge of the money should have given him money. But rather, they could afford to pay 7 or 8 million.
Yeah, about 8 million. So you feel that he was backed into the David Luiz decision?
Yes. I mean,
you feel that if he had his own way, he would have chosen a different player?
Of course, he would have chosen a different player. He will go for a 32-year-old if he can. This is a manager who is spending on Torreira. How old is Torreira? How old is Gondozi? How old is Ceballos? How old is Pepe? So you can clearly see that when it comes to Unai Emery, the sort of signings he will want to buy are those guys who are fresh and ready to work.
Okay.
Not somebody who's got mileage in his legs like David Luiz.
Okay.
He could cost them the game on Monday, though. David Luiz.
Interesting, Edwin. I don't know what your take is. Is Unai Emery the man the man in whose hands Arsenal should place their future?
Well, most definitely not. And I think you can tell from the start of the season. Of course, he had a decent season last time out by missing out on the Champions League places, by losing terribly to Chelsea in the Europa League final. Yeah, that was a decent season for Unai Emery.
You couldn't have won that.
For a winner, for someone who is a winner and so experienced, he approaches games like an amateur. He goes into games and allows his players to just do as they will. Just go forward and do what you can. He changes, experiments in games. He takes every game like it's preseason. He just goes in,
But I mean,
makes a change.
If you're coaching or managing a side, of course, you have to always make in-game changes.
Look, you go when you are a manager, you go into games. Of course, definitely you make changes in game as it progresses. But when you go into a game, every single game, and you have to make huge changes to either your formation, your lineup, or their style of play, then it means that you did not know what you were doing going in. I think the Premier League is beyond Unai Emery. He was successful in the smaller competitions, in the Europa League, in the French League, where the
Europa League is not a small competition.
There's not too much competition. It is.
No, but your
Basically,
Chelsea
when you
won that league.
It's a small competition.
It is not.
The two times Chelsea have played in the Europa League, they've won it because this is a team like Chelsea, a team like Arsenal, a team like Manchester United should be winning every single time they go into.
You have to give the man the benefit of simply because what did he inherit? He inherited
two
took
of the best strikers in the Premier League.
Apart from that, what else?
Lacazette and Aubameyang.
He inherited.
You see, ask Edwin, how are those two strikers performing under Unai Emery? He's made them better.
He hasn't made them better. They are naturally good strikers.
So he's added on to them. They are scoring goals.
You can't take Unai Emery buying David Luiz and saying that is not his decision, and him bring Arsenal signing Pepe and saying that has.
You and I know that
he signs off on every transfer that Arsenal are going to.
So you feel that everything he has done has been his call.
Has been his call. The decisions on the pitch have been his call. Anytime he puts in a player who is not playing well, like Xhaka, for instance, Xhaka has been dreadful for most of his games. I know sometimes it's not his fault.
Xhaka.
Why do you play him? There are options on the bench you could play, yet you decide to persist with Xhaka. You allowed players who are almost out of contract to go away. Aaron Ramsey, that's my point. He couldn't keep Aaron Ramsey, who was going to be a mainstay in this Arsenal team.
You allow
he was going to be a linchpin in this Arsenal team.
To blame Unai Emery.
No, for
Ramsey's exit.
No, Chris, let him make his point. I will ask the question.
Okay,
he's building a point. So
because he is at fault. Look, Hudson-Odoi would have left had Sarri continued at Chelsea because he wasn't in favour of the manager. But Lampard comes in, he signs a new contract. Okay. Because of the manager, because he trusts in the manager's ability.
So are you saying that Aaron Ramsey did not trust?
He did not believe in Unai Emery, and with good reason.
Was it not a case of money? Was it not a case of Unai Emery possibly and the Arsenal management saying that, look, you are at a certain age, we cannot offer you a certain amount of money because it distorts the wage bill.
If a player really wants to play for a club under a certain manager, he will take a pay cut. He will take a smaller amount of money, smaller benefits, just to play with this manager because he knows this manager is going to improve me. Ramsey left because he saw that where Arsenal was going with the manager they currently had, there was no chance of success going forward with Unai Emery.
Isn't it a bit too early to judge Unai Emery and already close the chapter on him and say it won't work?
Coach mentioned Arsene Wenger not beating Chelsea in enough games. In the FA Cup final, Arsenal managed to beat Chelsea. In the big game in the final, Unai Emery goes into a final and he absolutely capitulates. His team just falls to the ground against Chelsea. Against a really poor Chelsea side, I must admit. A poor Chelsea side that was missing, at that time, their key players in Hudson-Odoi in Ruben Loftus-Cheek
Are you saying
and a
that?
half-fit N'Golo Kante, a barely fit N'Golo Kante, and still Chelsea managed to walk all over that Arsenal team. This streaks of poor mentality from the manager down to the players. Once your manager does not have that big game winning mentality, then it trickles down to the players. The players accept it, and they also fall apart.
So I'm saying that all these are telltale signs that Arsenal need to take a decision.
They need to take a
hand
decision.
Their long-term future to Unai
This season, they barely beat Newcastle, a team that they shouldn't be struggling against.
Arsene Wenger, it wasn't working for him, but he stayed on for 20 plus years.
In these times, you can't afford to go with a manager when things aren't working for too long. It ultimately will crash. You have to bring in a new manager, get someone who understands the players better, get someone who can get the best out of his players. Unai Emery is getting 50% out of the players that he has right now. You know Aubameyang can do a lot more. You know Lacazette can be challenging for the top goal scorers award every single season. You know that he can get the best out of players like Callum Chambers. Even David Luiz isn't as bad as he's in that Arsenal team. At Chelsea, he was much better than this. Under Unai Emery and his tactics of going forward and leaving spaces at the back,
saying that
David Luiz is being exposed.
Are down to Unai. That's a bit unfair. Isn't that the players' own natural tendency?
Look, if you tell your players who are playing in front of the back four to do what they can, go forward at will, barely focusing on what they have to do defensively, it creates spaces where strikers can take advantage, overpower your defenders, your central defenders, and then get goals, force them into mistakes. That is the situation players like Luis, players like Socrates, who we know to be a really good defender, have become. They've lost a lot of that quality that they came into the Premier League with. And I think that it's all down to the manager.
Chris, what have you got to say in response quickly? Edwin seems to think that where Arsenal are at now is all down to Unai Emery, and it won't get better. Looking at some of the things we're already seeing.
It may not get better, not because of the manager. He's aware that if it doesn't get better, it's because of the people in charge of the cash.
So you think that Arsenal's problem is a cash problem?
As we speak, look at those he's bought. The chap he bought from Celtic, that young
Kieran Tierney.
How old is he?
Tierney is young, 18.
Very,
19.
very young. You saw him in midweek?
Yeah.
Very, very good, solid player. Look at the signings of Unai Emery. He's not only guaranteeing that this team will compete at the highest level, but he's giving them a long-term future. After 20-something years in the job, Wenger, he left them Monreal. How old is Monreal?
30 plus.
He left them, the only two things good about what Wenger did was him leaving those two strikers. Wenger sat there and Ramsey entered the last year of his contract. And then you blame Unai Emery, somebody who has walked into a new job, not knowing the dynamics.
Yeah, but the point, if you walk in and the player is leaving.
No, but you are aware. He was asked severally, what is the situation with Ramsey? He openly said it that, I want him to stay. It is beyond my, I have told him that he's an integral member of this team. That is why, even when Ramsey openly told the whole world that he was leaving, what did Emery do? He made sure he played in those important games, isn't it? It's a clear indication that the manager didn't want the player to leave. But you and I know that it was a matter of the bosses not ready to give the player what he wanted. Look, if Unai had met Ramsey with 2 or 3 years to the end of his contract, he would have renewed. But once the player walks into that, like we are seeing of Eriksen now, do you think Pochettino wants him to leave?
Clearly not.
But now the power is in the hands of Eriksen. So whoever brings the most money wins the bill. So you don't blame Unai Emery for that.
Interesting.